This is Political Junkeez with Brian Howie and London Thomas.
Hi again, everyone. Welcome back to Political Junkeez, the podcast for those hooked on politics. Joining me once again, Las Vegas nightlife queen, the voice of reason. And she came in here really well dressed today, so I'm going to add the lovely Kalika Moquin. And can I say that? Are you not offended by that?
I'm not offended.
You are aware that some would be offended by that.
Yeah, we can get into that later.
We'll get into that later, but some would be like, we noticed how you look. Like when you walked in here, all the guys are like, "Oh wow, what are you going somewhere?" And you came here, and we didn't. None of us, all the men in here, we didn't seem worthy of your wardrobe. So we commented on it, but some out there would be like, "Wow, don't make a comment." And guesting with us today, he's another big Vegas personality. I don't know his politics, but they seem a little complicated, and he's going to lay them all out for us very carefully. Joe Maz, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me on the show.
And when you walked in here, I said, "What are you?" And you're like, "I'm an independent." And I said, everybody says that until we start scratching at the surface, and then we get back to your history. It's a little elaborate. It's not an easy answer.
Yeah, I'll give you the whole history.
Give me the whole history.
We'll go through it. You want me to go through it right now?
Yeah, let's go through it right now.
Well, my history starts out, of voting age, I was voting for Bush. 2000, I voted for Bush. Came from sort of a Republican family.
And you voted for Bush where? What state were you in?
Minnesota.
Was Ventura the governor then?
Ventura was the governor then, I believe, or Arnie Carlson.
No, it's a complicated state.
Yeah, back when I was 18, I'd have to think back exactly.
Franken, you got some weird things there.
Ventura might have been later on.
Okay.
No, I think you're right. 98, 99 with Ventura.
Okay.
And then I voted Bush again in 2004. Just kind of aloof to politics, just a college student. 2008, I voted for Obama. I think most everybody I knew voted for Obama. Mm-hmm. He was a very well-spoken, very polished guy. Mm-hmm. That's all I needed at that time. I wasn't very involved with politics. I liked his policies from what I heard.
And he was against McCain at that time.
He was against McCain. I viewed McCain as just kind of this old person, and I viewed Sarah Palin as just kind of this crazy person. And
just another person who is like a lot of people in Minnesota that you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of hunters and things.
Yep. And then after that point is kind of when I've started to take an interest in politics and started to dive really deep into it. Because after I had voted Obama, I felt like I didn't see much change, and there was so much talk about change. So that's when I took an interest in it. I was getting older. I was getting to be about 28, 30 years old.
Oh, old man.
So, your mind starts to work in different ways,
Yep.
And then I after done my research, I had voted for Ron Paul in 2012. I considered myself an independent from that point forward. Mm-hmm. 2016, I didn't vote for Trump. My view of Trump was just kind of this obnoxious, rich guy. I saw him, and he had Hillary at his wedding, and I'm looking at these people like they're all in some sort of club together. You know what I mean? The visual of that. He had said that he was a Democrat for a while. Then all of a sudden he's a Republican, and I'm just like, what is this guy? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense. So I voted Gary Johnson. I was independent. I wanted something different.
And Gary Johnson was a libertarian?
He's a libertarian, but he was very liberal on certain things. As far as the drug war, he's like, just let's stop this with the drug war.
Do your drugs.
I'm like socially liberal, but on other things I'm conservative.
Yeah.
So now when it comes to Trump, I think over the last 2 or 3 years, I've really had sort of an awakening of sorts. Mm-hmm. I view him in a different light. I still think he's a terrible speaker. I think the guy's a terrible speaker. It's hard.
He wants to be a comedian.
He wants
the laughs.
He is funny in some respects. I mean, he is funny, but if you sit and watch him just speak off the cuff at one of these press conferences that we've all been watching throughout this whole ordeal,
yes,
it's like, it's just painful sometimes.
He wants to get a reaction.
Sometimes it's funny, but sometimes he just repeats himself, and he's just... But I think I understand it on a deeper level. I look past just the surface stuff, whereas I don't think I did when I was younger. So that's where I'm at now. I'm voting Trump in 2020.
He came out officially.
I came out.
So that is an unusual path in that a lot of very few people went. I've heard people who are like, I voted Hillary last time around, and now I'm voting Trump. Or I voted Trump last time around, and then, yeah, you're one of them. But the independent that has, like, I'm not on either side of it and came around to Trump is a little more unusual.
Yeah, I would say.
And you like that, COVID aside, you like the job he was doing before.
Trump's job?
Yeah, the job he was doing before, or where the country was at pre-COVID, or even, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think you have to sort of throw out a lot of the last 6 months in terms of, you can assess the last 6 months however you want. I think you also have to assess the first 3 years
Absolutely,
however you want. To some people, those are the same things. To some people, those are not. I don't know. You're somebody who went Hillary Trump. Wow.
Yeah, I was very, very anti-Trump for up until this whole COVID thing happened, actually. So
the COVID brought you around. The noise of the.
Well, I think a lot of the way I felt the left treated people with different opinions, what was kind of the first really big red flag for me. And then I think going into the riots and the hypocrisy of the left, or the protests, I had people who were telling me when I was at the swimming pool a week earlier that I was putting lives at risk for being at a pool with 5 of my friends when I actually had a mask on too. And then these same people who are telling me that are out in downtown Los Angeles with 60,000 people a week later to protest.
I know.
And then if I say something to them like, hey, weren't you telling me that I was putting lives at risk? Like, they're like, well, you were selfish and you want to be at a pool party, and we're doing it for this reason. It doesn't matter why you're doing it.
I would love to go to your protest pool party. That's what you just have to have. We're having a protest at my house.
Yeah.
We're gonna have burgers and come on over.
Yeah, it's hypocritical.
But that's interesting, and that's sort of what I want to get into is your journeys on it, because I was like, where did we come to this angry place? As we record this now, we are in the middle of some early testimony for Amy Coney Barrett, who's going to be probably confirmed as a Supreme Court justice. If she was put up for nomination 20 years ago or 30 years ago, she probably would get 75 votes or something like that. And then I checked on that. I went and I looked back at our confirmation hearings. The ones that the Democrats put, and this goes back, I went back to like Ford, so 35 years. The ones that the Democrats put up for nomination always got in. And they always got in fairly easily. Now, you can say that, well, maybe they didn't have such extreme opinions, so it's a little easier to put it in. That's fine. But even the ones that George Bush put in and his dad put in and Reagan put in, other than Bork, which was a weird, famous one who did not get in, they usually got in fairly easily. Now the idea that whichever either Obama had put in or now Trump nominates is, oh my God, we have 51, we have 52. It is so politicized based on nobody is voting outside of their party lines. It's like, how did we get to this angry place? And I think it started with the idea that the 2000 election was seen as not legitimate because it did go to the courts, and a lot of people thought George Bush Sr. was not legitimate. And then as that went on, a lot of people thought Obama wasn't legitimate because of the birther thing, and Trump has never been seen as legitimate, and whoever the next one is not going to be seen as legitimate. And that is this ramping up of this anger has so increased in the last 20 years. It used to be 20 years, 30 years, 40 years ago, you couldn't really tell the difference between a Democrat or Republican on a lot of levels because, like you said, I am this on some things and I am this on some things. A lot of the traditional evangelical crowd back in the day was Democrats. A lot of Southerners were Republicans, were Democrats. And a lot of Northerners were, California was a Republican state for a long, long time. Everything is sort of switched in a way that I think until one side doesn't necessarily win, but the other side just loses so badly that they're going to have to start over. And maybe when we start over, we will have 3 parties. Maybe that will split into 2, and it'll be 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's the only way out of this, is if we get to what you said, not a libertarian thing, but just one party turns into 2 distinct parties. I think that's the only way out of the anger. Thought?
I think we're very divided. I think the reasons that we are very divided have a lot to do with the media, in my opinion. I think part of my process and my journey through all this has been coming to that realization that the media has really driven a lot of anger. And a lot of their lies lead people to a paradigm that's false. They're living in a false world. For example, a lot of people, you see this argument on Facebook every single day. Whenever you post something about Trump, it's like they instantly just go towards he's a racist. Mm-hmm. He doesn't denounce the KKK.
But
and how do they arrive at that? That you just start with the most basic of claims. The basic claim is Charlottesville. Mm-hmm. Now, just take what the media did there. They took part of his speech, they ran the edit where he says there's very fine people on both sides, clipped out whatever context it was in, and ran with it. And it's everywhere, all over the world. Yep. And they control these main traffic lanes of information. They control social media. They control the regular media. And it's hard for people to get through with the truth, because if you say, well, actually, here's the clip where he says, and I'm not talking about the white supremacists or the KKK, they should be denounced totally.
Then they'll say you're defending him, and they'll call you a racist.
And what I say is this. So the racist thing, you could make an argument for. Basically because he's the Mexican thing, and if you want to go back to his real estate career, there's some shaky stuff on renting to black people back in the day. What I don't like is suddenly they say every minority says he's against us. So they're going to say he's anti-Semitic. Well, no, he's not. If you go to Israel, they fucking love Trump. He's got Jewish grandchildren. His daughter-in-law converted she's Orthodox Jewish, whatever. There's really no evidence that he's anti-Semitic. Then they're like, well, he's anti-LGBTQ. He's anti-gay. There's really no evidence of that either.
Yeah.
So exactly what you said is once a narrative gets played that he is somehow against, and he's, you can make an argument that he does offensive things to women, but he also hires a shitload of women to run his companies. He, starting from Ivana back in the day, he doesn't, people are like, oh, look at who he hired. He hired Kayleigh McEnany. She's pretty.
He does
that's why
hire
she
a
has
lot of
the
women
job.
for stuff.
He does, but he doesn't always hire hot women.
Yeah.
Sometimes he does. Hope Hicks, she's fucking hot and she's great. Sometimes he hires hot women, and sometimes he hires not hot women. And he still gives women a lot of power, but because he also wants to have sex with a lot of other women, because there's no evidence in the history of Trump outside of his groping at pageant people that he ever hit on anybody he worked with. There really isn't any sexual harassment stuff against Trump. So again, I'm not trying to defend him on that, but when you say every possible category, he's anti this, he's anti, then I think you're just listening to something and not doing what you're saying. That you parse, well, let me see what happened here in Charlottesville and see if I can make my own decision on that. And then we can sort of break down, which people don't do that anymore. It's this, you were either on this side or you were on that side. And I think the only way that's going to change is if one side loses. If Trump had won, he still might win. But I think pre-COVID, I think he would have won this. And I think what that would have done is the left would have been so defeated that they would have been like, we really fucked this up. And they would have splintered into two parties. The progressives would have gone this way, and the ones who want to go to the middle go this way. If Trump loses, I think that's going to be the same thing, especially if they lose the Senate. It's going to be the real right wing of the party here, another thing party. So I think that is how we get off the left versus right, is there's going to be three, but it's not going to be the third who were not happy with either party coming in. It's not going to be the third party that was, I didn't like either one. It's going to be one of the parties going to break into two, and one of those is going to have to build back up.
I mean, I think that the left kind of blew their shot with nominating Biden. I think they could have, they've had 4
Not
years.
if they win.
They've had 4 years to prepare for the right candidate. And, this guy can't even campaign correctly.
I think a lot of, and that's a good point, I think a lot of the right candidates just did not want any part of dealing with the Trump stuff. You don't want the nickname. You don't want to be Sleepy Joe or low energy Jeb. You don't want to be saddled with that. You don't want to be trash.
Obama 2.0 or something.
Right. But it was hard. Like somebody who had a real aspiring political career, a lot of them were like, I'm just going to wait
Brian, you
4
could have
years.
ran.
I know. I could have taken the crap. But a lot of people are like, I don't want to get involved in this. I will wait 4 years. So I think a lot of the talent sat out. And then that's why you were left with sort of, I don't give a shit. This is my last shot. Bernie, Warren, Biden, that they're like, I don't have another shot. So I get it. Trump probably scared away a lot of people because everybody saw what he did to the batch of Republicans last time around. And, I don't want to be, Crazy Nancy. And I don't want to be Lion Ted. And I don't want that. I could see how that's not appealing,
Yeah, I mean, with Joe Biden, I think it was brand recognition with Obama. He's associated with Obama. People know that name. I can't figure it out either, though, aside from that, because I don't think he has any ability right now.
Yeah.
I honestly think, and I wonder if his cognition just isn't there. As a matter of fact, I think the doctor for Obama just came out today and said he believes that he is not there cognitively. So.
Which is why I don't understand the Trump campaign doesn't do a better job of saying it's either me or Kamala.
Because that's what it is.
Let's what it is.
Honest,
I don't know why they don't openly go down that road.
I think they have been. If you follow them really close, they've been saying a lot of that. Absolutely, they've been saying a lot of that.
I think Trump should just sit in the debate. Say, I don't even know why you're here. We all know that you're not going to be here too. Like, just go right in on that and paint the picture of what a Kamala. So he's dabbled in it. He's tweeted on it. Pence didn't really say it. Like, it's sort of bad form. Especially now that he got COVID and he might have died himself. That was probably a bad thing to go to. But I think if he painted that picture, a lot of people, both sides of it, are not crazy about her. She got no votes when she ran in the primary.
No.
The black vote didn't come out for her. The white vote, the women vote, nobody liked her.
That's the weirdest part about all this is because they didn't really like Biden that much. Even if you talk to these people, you try and get engaged in conversation in social media, they don't like Biden. All they know is they hate Trump.
Right.
They just hate the guy.
And I have felt all along that people won't turn out to vote against somebody. Usually they need to vote for somebody.
Yeah,
they
you
really
want to
have
have passion for who you're voting for and
I
feel
think
good about it.
This is
Obama had the passion.
Yes.
I think it is flipped because I think they have done a good job of getting the vote out to the people who didn't vote last time. Now, I say that if you add up all the primary votes pre-COVID, pre-shutdown for this time, they didn't have as many Democratic primary votes if you added them all up than they did just for Hillary and Bernie last time around.
Which should be an indicator.
That should be an indicator. When you see the rallies, there's nobody going out for Biden.
Yeah. Or just the social media, how many people follow Biden compared to follow Trump.
I agree, but some Democrats will follow Trump just to see what crazy shit he might say. I don't think any random Republican is going to follow Biden.
Oh, they'll
so I don't know
stalk
if I
his
trust
profile.
that either. But then you see the early voting totals. I can't imagine those aren't Democrats, but I could be wrong. When you think of the early vote, the people who's like, I cannot wait to vote, are voting Biden or they're being pushed to vote Biden. And those are so far, I think, weighted because of where they're coming from. They're coming from real, Democratic districts. That might be too high a hill to overcome. But I don't know. It's a tough read. What we got into a little bit on our last episode here was if Biden wins, I do believe it will calm the country down. I just do. Because I don't think he will do anything. I don't think he'll do much of anything. He doesn't have a plan, really. So he's not going to come and do anything radical.
He's not done
I think
before.
that not doing anything will at least, and he won't say much, and we won't see him much. I think it'll put our politics a little bit, sorry for this show, in the background here. But I bring that up. A lot of people's like, no, you're wrong. People are going to freak out on either way.
I think if Biden wins, your show will be highly, highly rated because I think that what's going to happen is part of the reason I'm so passionate about what I'm doing right now is because I can see what's going on not only here but throughout the whole world. And if you look at Australia, the lockdowns that are going there, it's unbelievable what's happening. These people, the United Kingdom, Spain, Ireland, I can go on and on and on.
Yeah, not
but
Sweden.
but not Sweden. There is some crazy stuff going on right now, and Biden has given the indication that he subscribes to that same process. So I think if Biden wins, let's just say hypothetically Biden wins by a lot, and he implements lockdowns, national mask mandates like he's talked about, and puts more people out of business, I think you're going to see. I think you're going to see a civil war. I think there's a potential for a civil war over this election straight away, though. From my research, what's going on right now is unbelievable because I can see the scripting behind all of it. There's something called the Transition Integrity Project. Have you heard of this?
I have not.
So this is John Podesta, David Frum from The Atlantic. David Frum comes from the Bush administration. A Soros operative, we'll call her. And basically they have a war game scenario that they've been going over. They've been working with the New York Times on this. There was a story like August 2nd in the New York Times about this. And part of their scenarios are, if this happens, then we do this. If this happens. But one of the most frightening scenarios is they are calling for a street fight, not a political fight, if Trump wins. They're calling for a street fight. Okay? So they're calling for people to be out in the streets causing chaos. They have their lawyers lined up ready to go with the mail-in ballot scenario. Because I think there's going to be mail-in ballot issues throughout the country.
So you think it won't be? You think it'll be close enough that we won't know who to win, and the ballot issue is going to come in and it's going to get court or whatever. It's not going to be a landslide either way. That you could just be like, oh, it wasn't even close.
I personally think Trump is going to have a fairly decisive win.
You think he's going to win?
I think he's going to win on election night. And that's kind of been the narrative that's being put out in the media as well. Axios did a piece on this. They're going to say, here's what happens. Don't worry, though. Trump is going to win. It's going to look like he has a landslide win on election night. Hillary has already said, Joe Biden, do not concede under any circumstances.
Right, she did say that.
Absolutely, do not concede. He will not concede under any circumstances. So we're going to go days, it'll turn into weeks, and it'll probably turn into months.
Right.
And so many people are going to be so upset because we're going to be sitting in this not knowing what really happened. And the social media giants have already indicated which side they're on.
Yeah.
They're on Joe Biden's side. And they said that they're putting out messages saying, if you suggest that the election is fraudulent, we're going to censor that information.
They're already censoring information.
They're censoring information from Trump already. So I think what's going to happen is Trump will win either big or, a step below that.
He'll be ahead on November 3rd.
But close enough to where they're going to go into the battleground states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Florida, Michigan, Ohio. And they're going to say, well, we have to count these mail-in ballots. And they've extended the election, the acceptance of these ballots 10 days,
weeks.
2 weeks. So what they're going to do is they're going to say, where do we need votes? Where do we need the votes, guys?
Yeah.
Tell me the counties that we need the votes in.
Okay, so say that happens, and say Biden wins. Do you think that people are going to be riled up enough over Biden? I can see it where they've been riled up over if it was like Bernie.
I think
or most people deep down, I don't believe the Republicans are that afraid of Biden because he has a 47-year track record of being sort of in the middle.
Well, I think what's going to happen is the left, I don't think they care about Biden. They just
I don't think they care about Biden either. I'm wondering if the right cares about Biden enough to be mad.
Oh, well, I think the right cares enough to know they don't want to go back into lockdowns. That's number one. Straight away, that's number one. They don't want to go back into lockdowns because we've suffered through enough.
Yeah.
But I fear that what they're going to do is say Biden won, and social media will silence anybody trying to say, hey, look, here's the proof. This is not accurate. This is fraudulent. They're just going to censor that. They're going to take down Trump. Or, and this is right in the war game scenario from the Transition Integrity Project, or they're going to extend it all the way to January 20th, and Pelosi is going to say, well, we have to do a vote in the House if you look at the Constitution now.
Yeah.
So because we're in so much chaos, the only thing we can do is vote in the House.
Yeah, no, I
And
agree.
the House has the
I
majority.
think it's going to get
What I
drug
think
out,
about that,
too.
and you bring up Civil War, and London, who's been on this podcast, brings up the Civil War. I think that what would happen is if you tried again to relock things down, like as you say, like now they're talking about doing it again in London, and they're talking about doing it again in New York, whatever. Florida will never lock down again.
Everyone will move
Texas
to Florida.
will never lock down. And then you're going to see a real split in between because the federal government really does not have the power to lock anybody down. They absolutely don't have the power to do a mask mandate, but a lot of people don't understand that they don't, and a lot of the Democrats will fall in line with whatever the presidents say, the Democratic governors. There's going to be a real split because early on when COVID started back in March, April, May, everybody went along with it for a little while, which, you know, I don't understand. Like, Trump didn't take it seriously. We're all fucking locked down for a while everywhere.
People that still swear we're in this position because of Trump, and it's like that's not.
That's five
true at
other
all.
shows. I get with that, but there's going to be some like DeSantis came out and said that he's like, we will never lock down again. We understand this now. It's never going to get to that point. You can pretend all you want about that. But I think that the only thing that would really cause a split, and they used to say for years, during the 80s and the 90s, that the only thing that would cause a civil war in this country was Roe v. Wade. And too many people are on the side of pro Roe v. Wade, or 2/3 of it. That didn't happen. The thing that would ever cause a civil war in this country, besides a lockdown, is the gun thing. Because if you try and take the guns away from the people who have the guns,
Yeah.
they're not giving up the guns, and that will lead to war. So Biden has a pretty neutral record on this. I think, I don't know what Kamala's history is on guns or whatever, but if ever a candidate came in or whatever, there was some legislation like, oh, we got our guy and now we're going to try and take people's guns, that's a war issue.
Well, I think this election, therefore, is a issue that could lead to a civil war because Biden and Kamala Harris have both stated that they would take assault weapons.
And they would go to war over that.
I think you could. I think people would be willing to go to war over that because
And they have the assault weapons.
you know, there's a lot of people in Australia that wish they would have a way of defending themselves right
Yeah.
now. Not only that, but I think the discussion is going to be more about the vaccine coming up. And Trump has some interesting verbiage himself on the vaccine. I don't agree with Trump at all on the vaccine.
What is his verbiage on it?
Well, the Operation Warp Speed.
We're all gonna he's gonna make everybody take it.
Well, he's not saying it's going to be
He's
mandatory.
pushing it through.
That's one of the things I do like, but he is definitely touting it a lot. And to say Operation Warp Speed to me is and vaccine in the same sentence.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
I think that's
Or-
what, there's three mistakes that Trump made that I think he can get blamed for that never come up. They bring up the I don't know what they bring up the stupid things like, oh, he said it was a hoax or whatever, which he didn't. The three things that Trump can be blamed for: he bought into the bullshit. 2.5 million people are he bought into a bad model. He didn't fire Fauci, Birx, Adams when they clearly did not know what they're doing and they were out of their thing. And he was told nothing good will come out of this until we have a vaccine. And those were the three things that he never bought into, well, you know, until he got it himself. Maybe a cure, maybe some treatments, maybe herd immunity, maybe any of these other strategies that work. He got bluffed into, if I don't shut it down, 2.5 million people are going to die. He believed that.
Yeah.
He stuck with that group too long, which I don't understand. Biden's like, I'm going to put Fauci in charge as soon as I get in office. Well, you're putting the same guy in charge who's in charge now that you don't like. I don't understand that. He didn't get
So
rid
you're
of
not
them
firing
when
him,
he
yeah.
should have gotten rid of them. They went all in and they were wrong. And he is, whether he's in bed with the pharmaceutical companies or not, but Trump has been the only answer is vaccine, which is not necessarily true. We might never have a vaccine. We might never have a good vaccine. So those are the three mistakes that Trump really made that never come up. But you're right on that. That's like we're gonna make everything okay with a rushed vaccine. Fuck that. I'm not taking that.
Oh, I'm not taking it. I know lots of people are not taking that thing, no matter what.
They're not. So what does that do? Yeah.
But I think Trump, he has interesting language on the vaccine. He doesn't say anything about it being mandatory. I haven't seen that at all. He talks about therapeutics. He went through COVID now himself. He says, yes, you know, we have to be aware of it, but hey, it's not so bad. Try and ease your fears so we can move forward. He says, open the country. If he's saying open the country, he's obviously, that would be conflicting with you need a vaccine to open the country. So that does, it doesn't
Right.
make sense. So that's what I like to see. That's what I'm about. And that's a big part of the reason I'm voting the way I'm voting. I don't think he's going to allow states to say, because the verbiage in a lot of these countries is you won't be able to board a flight unless you have the vaccine. You won't be able to renew your driver's license. You won't be able to go to school. You won't be able to go to a store,
It's like
possibly.
tyranny, right?
Well, I know
tyranny.
there's a point where, we're still making the football coaches who have had the virus wear the mask. And I'm like, and they're coming up with like, no, well, you can get it again. No, you can't. That's lightning strikes twice
Yeah,
stuff. You
that's
can't.
like for show, I feel like.
Right, it's for
almost.
show.
It's
So
just-
making those people, so Trump's like, I'm cured. I don't have to worry about it. It's wonderful. People are going to start licking doorknobs to get it because once you get through that barrier, it seems awesome on the other side of the fence. It
It's
seems
like
so liberating.
They used to. I didn't realize this up until recently, but they used to have smallpox parties for kids.
Oh, you can't
Well,
even say that now
chicken,
without.
chickenpox,
Or
not smallpox.
chickenpox.
You couldn't
not
say that
smallpox.
without somebody just telling you you're like crazy.
Right. So
Yeah,
if you're
and
20, I know some person last week who she lives in Nashville. She wanted to go to the Alabama Ole Miss football game. She's like, I need to get it and be better by that game. And she did that. She was like, I was felt hungover for 3 days, which I would have felt anyway. She was fine. And now she's living her best life. And so you want that get out of jail free card, which a lot of it to travel to the countries and all that. So a lot of people now are like, well, I'm not going to take the vaccine, but if you guys all take it, then we'll get some of these restrictions gone. But it is getting to the point where if you're better off having it than not having it, and you believe you're young and healthy, it's tough to lock that person down.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think it's going to be good enough, though, because you have Bill Gates going on TV like twice, 3 times, 4 times a week saying we need to vaccinate every person on Earth, just about every person on Earth. And it's over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
And now he's saying not only that, but we need to vaccinate them a second time, a third time.
I know. It's like they're pushing the flu shots earlier, so you have to get a second flu shot in, February,
What
March?
is his obsession with vaccines? I don't ever.
You're
really
not a
understand
flu
it.
shotter, right?
No, I've never gotten a flu shot. Plus, I hear it
No.
doesn't even really work.
Yeah, they're like
So- I
know.
40% effective.
I don't
Yeah.
want a flu shot, but even this vaccine is only going to be so perspective. See, did we hear what happened? What's going on in Russia? Like they have a vaccine.
Yeah,
Are they all right?
How did that work out?
Well, we didn't. How come that isn't news either
Is
way?
this like race to the moon stuff where they're
Well,
just
they
like,
did-
we got it, it's all over here.
Well, I know, but we dismissed the vaccine because it was Russian. But they did get to the moon. Like they did get to space quick.
Right,
Like,
but
they did.
it seems like we're in
But
this
why
contest.
isn't that news either way? Like, if their vaccine works, we should hear about
feel
it.
like
And if their
nothing-
vaccine doesn't work, we should hear about
Nothing
it.
positive is gonna make
We
the
should
news here.
know.
It's just, there's just people who I
Right?
feel like
Did somebody Google that? It's not. I
Yeah.
looked that up yesterday. Like Russia stats, you can't tell. You don't know if their vaccine works.
Right.
But you can't put anything positive on the news now. Like if you put, okay, there might be a cure, this might work, the cases are low here, they're opening because of this reason. If there's anything positive, you have this group of people, which I say
Well,
probably
we
mostly
don't know
left.
if you can get it again. Well, we
Yeah.
don't know the long-term effects.
Yeah.
Well, you might not be fine.
Yes.
There's so many things. The amount of people rooting for Trump to
Yeah.
die was ridiculous.
Oh, my-
And then once he got better, it's like, well, he couldn't have possibly
Yeah.
had it. That the actual scenario was
Totally.
he got it. The McDonald's in his body fought it off, whatever it is, and he was just fine. 34 people got it in the White House. You heard what a horrible super spreader event it was. All 34 are fine.
Yeah.
That should
Yep.
be news. And so when he said, like, don't be scared of it, he should have said, don't be scared of it now. So I'm sorry about your, grandparents 6 months ago when we didn't have the cure, we didn't know, and we were shoving a ventilator down everybody's throat,
Yeah.
and they were all dying right now. But he said, like, we are in a place where you're going to probably be okay now. And instead he was a little dismissive of it. It's nothing. Like, again, he says the wrong things.
Yes.
It can come off as insensitive, certainly. But
Yes.
I think most people are much more scared of losing another 6 months of their life, having their kid in a school where there's plexiglass and they're wearing a mask all day, losing their business, taking some weird Bill Gates vaccine. I think people are much more scared of that. So
I agree, but the people who are running the media or doing a lot of this either have jobs that they're not going to lose, or they have the resources to homeschool their kids or whatever, and
Yep.
they're drowning out the people who are like, I'm going to lose my business.
I almost feel like you shouldn't get a vote, an opinion on it if you are working.
Yeah.
Like it should be none of your business.
I know,
if
we should have school for those people. But
if you don't have a kid that's in school, you don't get an opinion on it.
The unions have a huge say in schools going back, and when they're like, well, we'll open up schools again, but you have to, defund the police. Then I'm like, well, what are you doing
Isn't
here?
that crazy?
You're taking kids' education and combining it with coronavirus and combining it with political agenda. And that's a real thing. People think I make that up all the time.
Absolutely.
That happened in LA. It happened in New York where the school unions were like, we'll open, here's our list of demands, and they have nothing to do with safety, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
And as a parent, I don't understand why. And my kid is absolutely going to get, I don't have a kid, this is my mythical kid. My theoretical kid would absolutely get sick off of wearing his filthy mask all day long and blowing his nose on it. And like, that is the worst thing for these children, to be wearing dirty masks, I think, right?
Oh,
Mom?
I think, you would know better.
Well, I mean, yeah, it is, and I think as a kid, you're supposed to get germs and get dirty. But I think the biggest thing that hurts me is, I have a son that's special needs. He can't wear a mask, and a lot of kids can't wear masks if they're in the special education program. And it's like, what are going to happen to these kids when they're the only kid in school not wearing a mask? That they're going to get bullied.
Yeah, I know.
It's going to be really bad.
That's a good point. I asked somebody today who's a doctor, but she's also very, her science has been skewed by her hatred of Trump. Okay. So I said,
That happens.
when will it be okay to not wear the masks? When is that? What is that date?
And what'd you say?
And she's like, well, when this is over. I go, well, what does that mean? She's like, well, when we have this under control. Well, what's your standard of that? And the more you ask them, I go, when? And she can't even say when we have a vaccine. As a scientist, she knows that's not true. The virus is never going to go away like anything else. That's not true. They don't have an end game on this, because the only end game they really have is, once he's out of office, I will listen to possibilities that this is over. That they can't even, scientists or not, conceive of a scenario where this is over until he's gone. And that's so dangerous that you're willing to hurt your children with now a second year of school because you don't like Republicans. Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
So this is a doctor.
She's a doctor.
And she's very anti-Trump?
Very.
Okay.
So she's like, I go, just give me your milestone of what we can reach for us to open or us to go back to normal.
Does she believe in masks?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Mask till that day. So I go, when is that day that we can take the masks off? Can you give me an answer? There's no answer on that, because the real answer is, once Trump's gone, I will think about an answer.
So essentially, she's admitting that she has TDS because
she absolutely.
She's
has
not
it.
thinking. She's not even willing to think rationally until Trump is out.
She won't even entertain the question. I won't even entertain the question of when. I go, if you just told people what is the bar we have to reach, because the old days, back when we were young kids, it was, don't overwhelm the hospitals. Okay. We never came close to overwhelming any hospitals.
The old days, this is back in March.
Yeah, other than
the old days of March.
Right.
Yep.
Other than a handful of places in New York that were shitty fucking hospitals in the first place because they were badly run locally.
Yeah.
We didn't overrun any hospitals. So then that wasn't good enough. And then they kept kicking the can down the road until it's like, that we have to get beyond Trump to even have an answer to that. But meanwhile, every single day, a business is going out of business, or a child is getting hurt, or somebody's skipping a cancer test, or all these other things that no scientist will even listen to, because they only care about Trump.
Yeah, and that's a thing with the left too. Is, they say we're the party of compassion. And you try to lay out all of that in front of them, that there are suicide is on the rise, and there's depression, and these kids aren't in school, and people are losing their jobs and their savings, and they have no compassion for that.
The fat people are at the worst risk for getting COVID, and everybody's staying home and gaining 15 pounds, or at least I am.
If you try to have compassion 360, for everything, you're actually called selfish and dangerous. You can only have compassion for the people who are sick with COVID.
Right.
That's it.
Which I do not understand. So there was a time, though, and maybe it's because more places are open, but there was a time when people were protesting and rising up to open it up. I need my fucking business. For some reason, in a lot of states that are still closed down, California for one, I would be going nuts if my business was shut down. Or if you told me my business was not essential, your business isn't essential. You can shut down. You can go out of business.
Joe's a DJ.
I know. I don't know why we're not warring, or why those people are not louder now.
Well, because they're in Texas and Montana now. They moved.
Oh, they already moved.
I think there's a mass exodus from California, honestly.
Yeah.
I agree with
really
that,
do.
but a lot of people can't afford to just pack up and move. Maybe they can.
Well-
Maybe they all left. I don't know.
I think you get shut
A
down
lot of people
too,
after
though.
Katrina took their FEMA check and they moved. They moved to Texas. A lot of the Louisiana population. So maybe they're like, you know what? I don't care what's happening in California. This fucking sucks, and I'm out of here anyway. That could be it.
I think the governor Newsom, for example, he finds right where the choke point is on this stuff. Not pushing you too far, pushing you just enough. You know what I mean? So if you have a business like a restaurant or whatever, and it's, the thing with Pelosi was a perfect example. It was, here she is in a salon getting her hair done while the whole rest of San Francisco is closed down. What happens after that comes out? Oh, let's open up those salons now. They'd know right.
See, I get criticized because I don't have a problem with that because I think Pelosi's hot for an 80-year-old.
Whoa.
I do. I think she's a hot 80-year-old. Sorry. And so I'm like, she's looking good with her hair and whatever it is she's doing.
Yes.
But you're right on that. That is a skilled politician, that he's able to just make ridiculous decision after ridiculous decision, and the most populous state in the country is still locked down, but the most people are just going along with it.
Well, the most crazy thing that I saw this week was he's now advising that you should wear a mask in between bites of food. Did you see this?
I saw that.
Did you see this?
Yeah.
Well, but that got to where, he made so many weird decisions. He made if you're going to be incarcerated, you get to declare which sex you are and where you wanted to go to jail. So for listeners out there, I identify as a woman, so send me in with the women prison if something
That's
happens.
just nuts.
That's nuts. And he's made and California now is going to explore slave reparations, even though they weren't even a state then. He just one after another. He just comes like the two people who are really doing the worst job are Cuomo and Cuomo still released the book. Like the book came out today. That he wrote the book about COVID and what a good job he did. Cases are on the rise. They might close it down and go like.
But New York had
it's
the most
insane.
cases and most deaths of any
I
states.
know.
And then Fauci says he's the best at handling it.
I
and then
know.
Biden says, you know what, I possibly want this guy as my attorney general.
You know,
see that?
Fauci
No.
got mad at the Trump campaign and he said, I never get involved in politics, but there's these like love letters that he sent to Hillary Clinton. He's like, watching you speak makes me cry, and I'm so moved by you. And
Oh, we're going to go WikiLeaks,
I know.
are we?
Well, I mean, they're open about that because he's a bureaucrat who's wanted to keep in the job. Anthony Fauci, for the last 42 years, has been the highest paid government official in the entire federal government. He makes $450,000 a year. He makes more than the president. He wants to keep that job. And that job is unfireable. It's almost impossible to fire him. Even the president can't fire him out of the job that he's in. It just doesn't work that way. So he loves the stuff that he's doing. And, he's had a nice career. I appreciate it. He's gotten every possible thing wrong on COVID. I don't know why that doesn't come up more. Everything he makes gets excused with, well, we didn't know then, and he didn't know then. Well, his job was to know then.
Yeah, but people just think that Fauci speaks
Anti-Trump.
the language of science, and science is God.
But
So-
he doesn't speak. A lot of scientists speak a language different from Fauci.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of countries have a Fauci that, I don't agree with him at all. They don't. And so when people are like, that's the only scientist I'll listen to, somebody who hasn't actually practiced science in over 40 years. He's really just been a fundraiser and a mouthpiece and a bureaucrat in the government thing. He's not there with the beakers.
You brought up a lot of really good points. You made a phenomenal video that got how many shares?
It was like 1,000 shares.
Okay, it was like 1,000 shares, and he made a collaboration of all the different clips of different scientists and doctors, coming forward and saying like, hey, maybe COVID isn't as dangerous, or maybe this is a cure for it. It was a really positive video. It could give a lot of people hope if they want to pay attention to it. But people just on the left shut it down.
Right.
Well,
and this is a good point.
They banned it.
It got banned. It
got
did.
banned.
Crazy how much time on political junkies we talk about COVID, because that's how political COVID is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really like a big political issue. Like there's no getting around it. You can't say like, well, you're making it political. It is political.
That's crazy.
And when you're keeping kids out of school, like if I were a parent, I can't, and it's about 50-50, right? That half want it and half don't go back to
I feel
school.
like now more people they want their kids in school.
Because
Yeah.
all the places where the school is open or anywhere around the world haven't had a real problem.
And private schools
That's a
are
real
open.
thing.
That's your proof,
Yeah,
Yes.
the proof is like that happened. Like schools have been open all over the world with no problem. People always
Yep.
like, Florida's stupid, Florida's stupid. Tell me when a decision Florida has made has not worked out right.
Well,
Hasn't happened.
I posted a clip, a news story from Sweden where they go into the school, and it's like nothing ever happened.
I know. Now,
no.
one caveat on the Sweden thing, and we are not nearly as healthy as Sweden as a people. So just because it worked in Sweden, it might not work here. I'll grant you that. But if you want to look at let's look at all of the countries in the world that have sent their kids back to school, or the states in America who have sent their kids back to school. We're talking about tens of millions with no cases, and somebody will be like, no, look, there was that woman in South Carolina. Like, they'll grab the
one.
outlier and make it the norm. And
Right.
that's the problem.
That's what happens with everything now, though.
With everything now.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
Oh, no, some guy in Nevada got it again. Mm-hmm. That means we can all get it twice, so there's no
Right.
protection. Like, that is so nuts. That's like saying,
How we move forward in that paradigm?
you can't. That's why I'm like, well, then tell me the answer.
Mm-hmm.
You want to give me the answer of how? That's the answer I want out of Biden. Don't tell me like we're gonna get PPE, which you didn't get in the first place, or we're gonna lock it down and we're gonna do all this. Tell me how we get out of this. Because if you're saying that answer is a vaccine, 2/3 of the people are never taking a vaccine. And if you want to dismiss the fact that a lot of us have pre-existing immunity in the T cells and all that kind of stuff, which a lot of real scientists believe, you got to tell me why you're dismissing that's not true, and you have to give the country an end game.
Yeah.
What is it? We're going to
Yes.
contract trace Americans to death? We're not doing that. That's never happening here. You talk about where your civil war is coming from. You want to see my phone? No.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Well, Fauci, he just did a video this week where he said even the vaccine. In a video this week, in an interview, he said even if we have the vaccine, this is not coming to an end.
Right.
He said the masks are here to stay.
Yeah.
From this point
Really?
forward.
Here to stay.
Life in general. Okay. The masks are here to stay, and the social distancing is here to stay. He said we can start talking about possibly getting back to a new level of normal, the new normal, but a new level of kind of where we were at, but it'll never be the same, is what he's saying. And he says 2021, the end of 2021. So this is the message that he's sending.
If that's the case, there's going to be a have-nots where the people who have had the virus are going to be leading a much better life. Nobody's going to wear the mask because everybody's going to want to get it.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy how divided we will be by states, where I think you have states like Florida and Texas and Georgia who are just living as normal, and then you're going to have the states like California, Nevada, Washington, Oregon that are basically
living
stuck
in
back in this, until
I know.
end of
A lot of people
2020.
don't understand. Like, if you don't like the way that the states' rights exist, you're going to have to blame Alexander Hamilton versus Trump. People don't really understand the way our country is set up. Like, there's no national mask mandate. People's like, no, the seatbelts. There's no national seatbelt law. It's a state-by-state thing. New Hampshire has no seatbelt law.
But this is part of the beauty of our country, right?
Yeah.
You can't just have somebody dictate to all these people. You decide on an individual basis in a localized area.
I think it was Nelson Rockefeller used to say back in the day that there is no Republican Party. There are 50 state Republican parties. Mm-hmm. He used to say that because he understood that it was really local and it was really state. That has only changed in like the last... People would pay attention to their mayor and their county executives and their governor, and they would get involved in the national politics every 4 years.
Yeah.
That's the way it was. Now everybody thinks national politics need to control my life, tell me what to do, save me, be my healthcare provider, which we're not set up that way. And then, locally, my governor just needs to listen to whoever our supreme leader is. Like, that's insane. Why did that happen?
I don't know why it happened that way. I think it's the control, the consolidation of information, globalization of everything. When you were growing up 30 years ago, your information came from the newspaper, or you would talk to your friends more. We didn't have an iPhone that plugged in and told us what to think every single day. We didn't have Netflix telling every single person what to think every day. Mm-hmm. Everything's become centralized, I think, and it continues to go that way. As far as the states versus the country, one of the things that I've seen that's interesting is I have DJ friends that live in some of these areas like New York City that are moving from New York City to areas where they can work. Mm-hmm. And the areas where they can work are Republican areas. but they're still rabid anti-Trump.
Yeah,
And they don't understand the hypocrisy of that because, months ago they're talking about
So they'll go for the work.
that they're going for economic opportunities, and they talk about taxes. There's no taxes in Florida, there's no taxes here. It's just so ironic. And then I know they're still going to vote against Trump.
Well, the limousine liberals.
Well, I think if you're voting Democrat now, especially if you're out of a job, you're voting against your own best interest. And you said that
they
before.
want the federal government to take care of your best interest. I think that started when the conversation, now that I think about it, when the conversation about healthcare reform started, because we didn't talk about this for a long, long time. Like, we didn't talk about this till, I think Hillary brought it up back when her husband was president. She tried to redo it. That starting back in World War II, where the companies took over your health care, which is nuts to begin with, but that's a different podcast. People just sort of went about it. It wasn't a day-to-day thing. But then it was like, the government needs to take care of us. The federal government needs to provide this, this, and this. That a lot of that turned back to, traditional old-school liberalism, where it was like, the government needs to save me. So it's now, I don't care what my governor does locally. I need Trump, Biden, whatever, to save me, to tell me how I should operate, to tell me how I'm going to be healthy, to tell me, go to the fucking gym or go walk.
Isn't the whole point of America was founded on free will?
Yes,
I know.
We left England to come here to.
I get this, and now we want a king to tell us what to do. It doesn't make any sense to me, no matter what side of it you're on. Like, it's nuts the way you want somebody else to be responsible for the thing that you should be responsible for, which is your personal health, your freedom, your family, your school district. The federal government has absolutely nothing to do with your local school district. They never has. The Department of Education has nothing to do with that. Like, talking about, I want to see how the election turns out before we can send our kids back to school. They're not related issues.
No.
Joe Biden cannot open your school. He cannot close your school.
No, you should just know where you want to go with that, right?
Yeah.
You don't need this election to decide for you.
No, so I don't know what you're waiting on for that. I don't understand how people don't understand that 99% of their lives, other than fix the national highways and our military, is your mayor, your county executives, your school board, moving up to maybe your governor, and the federal government doesn't have that big role in it. But the way, we want to bring Schumer, Pelosi, Mitch, Trump, Biden to be this overpowering thing that really they don't have any power over.
Our faith should never be in the hands of our government. And
what we've learned about Trump is a lot of it is mostly ceremonial. He just doesn't have that much power. He is a little bit sort of like the thing. Executive orders are powerless. That's a new thing. They don't have any value. We're just not set up that way.
Yeah,
even when he issued that executive order for the unemployment, supplement on unemployment, we're like, great, this is awesome. And then all the rest of the states, some of them were like, well, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, it's a suggestion.
And it lasted for 3 weeks.
It's all a suggestion. That's what people understand. If Trump said tomorrow, everybody has to wear masks and all the businesses closed, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Because they don't have that power.
Right.
And the courts will not hold up. All right, this was fun. I like this. But final thought, piece of advice to the world, or a conspiracy theory that you believe in that you're trying to push that's not getting enough play. Any of those three things. Those are your choice.
I don't think Bill Gates has our best interests in heart. I think Bill Gates is a Satanist. I think he's evil.
Oh, you do? You think because he doesn't want the money, he wants the control?
Well,
what does he want?
Bill Gates, I mean, he where did he go from this shrewd businessman to all of a sudden the global health chief? And why?
Does he get points for giving away all his money?
Well,
or is he going to make more?
That's the common response to that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
He's going to make more on the back end?
I don't trust Bill Gates.
Yeah, I know. He seems like a nice guy, but back in the day, he was the biggest bastard ever. You forget that the government fought Bill Gates for 30 years.
Absolutely. It was antitrust lawsuits and all that in the 90s, yeah.
Good. Well, this is fun. You were good.
And my advice is just, try and think for yourself more. Try and, you were talking about in the last podcast, I overheard you, use a lot of sources of information. That's the biggest thing that I've done differently over the last 5-10 years is I go to MSNBC. What are they saying? I go to Fox News. What are they saying? What is this random ass conspiracy site saying? You know what I mean? Absorb surround yourself with all these different information and then try and make the best decision. Don't just look at your Apple News for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, well, okay, that's that.
Which has been hand selected
You know what I mean?
for you, and even the headlines written for you. That's true. Do your own homework, but go to a lot of different libraries to do it. Good. Last thoughts?
I think I really hope that after this year, whether it's 2020 or it was in 2021, that everyone comes out a little bit more humbled from the whole experience. Before the pandemic, I think we were all moving a million miles an hour. I think that people were getting really greedy with stuff. We both work in nightlife industry, and I think like just for talent, the prices of some of these acts were people were wanting $300,000-$400,000 for a DJ to come in. It wasn't making sense financially.
Right.
People were just giving out salaries to people. There was a lot of ego involved, and now we've seen some of the top people get furloughed, lose their jobs. Rates are dropping, and I hope that everyone is humbled by the experience, and that as soon as we don't go back to open up doors, everyone just jumps right back to where we left off at.
Yeah, I don't think we will.
I hope this
don't
stint
think
wasn't
there's
for nothing.
I know.
Not a chance.
Got to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
A reset. The 6 months of lockdown absolutely was not a reset. That was not the way to do it. We have to figure it out. Thanks, you guys. This was great. As far as us, as always, like, share, subscribe, and please review this show. It means a lot in the podcasting ecosystem, and we will see you next time on Political Junkeez.